It's -8. There's about 2 feet of snow. It's freezing cold in Dnipro. Imagine what it's like in the trenches. So when you hear the word peace, many here just don't think it's going to happen. The reason he's hitting the power infrastructure and those energy facilities is because he wants to break the back of the Ukrainian people. Oh. Let's go inside and talk about this. But I really just wanted to give you some context of why he's doing what he's doing.
We've heard the word peace repeated again and again, in press briefings, in diplomatic statements, in carefully managed optimism, and certainly from the Trump administration and President Zelensky. But the reality from Ukraine to the Middle East and now to Latin America tells a very different story. What we're seeing instead is pressure, strain, alliances bending, and in some cases completely breaking. In this episode, I want to walk and talk through the last 7 days and connect the dots and explain why what looks like diplomacy on the surface is, in reality, pressure on the Kremlin, on Putin, on the Russian leadership. Something we simply have not seen at any point since the full-scale invasion, or arguably during Putin's entire tenure. This is another episode of Voices from the Front.
Whether we are interested in Ukraine withdrawing its troops from the areas under their control, we are not really interested about that. If the Kyiv authorities do not want peace, we will deliver on all the objectives of the special military operation by military means.
Last week in Ukraine, let's start here, because if peace was a real thing, you would see it here first. Instead, this past week delivered one of the clearest signals yet that Russia is not de-escalating, it's recycling escalation from the old Kremlin playbook. The use of the Oreshnik missile system wasn't about military necessity. It wasn't decisive, it didn't change the battlefield, and it definitely didn't produce a breakthrough. What it did do was familiar though. It was theatre. A message aimed outward towards a foreign audience, deliberately staged close next to a NATO border. Western media picked it up and circulated Putin's image of power across the globe exactly how he intended. But it was also aimed inward at a domestic population that needs to believe something has changed. But here's the problem for Moscow. If these systems worked the way they were implied to work, Ukraine would already have fallen. They didn't work last winter. They didn't work the winter before that. Recycling them now isn't strength, it's desperation. When you keep doing the same thing over and over while expecting to get different results, it shows the world you're out of ideas. And from the civilian side, the power outages, the infrastructure strikes, the targeting of energy, this isn't escalation, it's admission. Admission that the battlefield has stalled, admission that momentum has shifted, admission that Russia is spending billions to repeat a failing plan, something that is increasingly unsustainable for a Russian economy that's already teetering. Let's recap. This is exactly why we recorded the episode Power Shift, because what's happening now isn't about one strike, one missile or one announcement. It's about who is reacting and who is shaping events. Russia is reacting, Ukraine is adapting. And the West finally is planning in longer timelines. In the power shift, we laid this out clearly. Russia is now defending everything, all of the time. Its resources are stretched, its alliances are transactional, and its strategic options are narrowing, not expanding. If you haven't watched that episode yet, I strongly recommend it, not because it's dramatic, but because it explains why this week looks the way it does. What you're seeing now is the downstream effects of that shift.
Marico, vamos a moverla. Graba ahí. Espera.
No, me está jodiendo. Marico, no puedo creer esta mierda. Marico, me está jodiendo.
Marico, tengo el corazón mío. Ya, marico.
Llama ya mismo.
No voy a ir al lado fuerte ni uno.
Sí.
This brings us nicely to Venezuela. What's happening there isn't isolated and it isn't accidental. Venezuela exposes the reality of Russia's so-called global alliances, especially when just months earlier Moscow was offering Caracas a strategic partnership that already looks fragile. When real pressure appears, these relationships don't hold, they fray, they fragment, they turn inwards. Russia cannot defend its allies, that's clear, and sustain a full-scale war and posture globally at the same time. Yet Putin is attempting all three, and in doing so looks visibly weak. Something has to give, and now it is, because this isn't multipolar strength. This is overextension.
Some call it an uprising, others insist it's a revolution. Whatever you call it, protests in Iran are growing, bigger, bolder, and more widespread by the day. They've spread to major cities and small towns, wealthy neighborhoods, and impoverished areas across a country of 92 million people. RFERL's Radio Fardo spoke to one protester in the northeastern city of Mashhad on January 9th, a day after Iran saw its biggest protests in years.
The crowd was so large that security forces didn't dare show up.
Iranian authorities, however, remain defiant. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei dismissed the unrest, saying the Islamic Republic will not back down.
The same pattern now appears with Iran. Though I won't go deep into operational detail while events are still unfolding, but the same shape is already familiar. Escalatory rhetoric from the regime blaming the US, public protest and visible discontent, reports of elite flight and gold quietly leaving the country. The population isn't just testing the regime's limits, they're testing Russia's limits as well. Because everyone involved understands the system itself is under strain, and that opportunities like this may not come round again. This is what late stage pressure looks like. Not sudden collapse, but constant friction. And we've seen this movie very recently in Syria. Throughout the last year, as fighting intensified and diplomatic pressure mounted, Russia's role shifted quietly from guarantor to bystander. Moscow talked escalation, it talked resolve, it talked red lines. But when it really mattered, its ability to shape outcomes was limited, and now that reality is visible to the world. Which brings us to Bashar al-Assad. Having been to Syria myself, I saw for first hand. Assad survived not because Russia imposed stability, it didn't. He survived because the system around him fragmented just enough to avoid a decisive outcome. That distinction matters. Because survival is not strength, and dependence is not alliance. What Russia once sold as a network of loyal partners now looks like a collection point, a place where embattled leaders orbit Moscow out of necessity, not confidence. This is an emerging pattern. Allies under pressure, leaders facing legitimacy crisis, states seeking cover and coordination. Russia is no longer exporting power, it's absorbing liabilities. In Syria last year, in Iran now, and across Russia's former sphere of influence, escalation is used not to win but to delay reckoning, to buy time, to signal relevance, to prevent collapse. That's not what confidence systems do. That's what overstretched systems do. when they can no longer dictate events, only react. And it's exactly why Russian propaganda is now in overdrive. This isn't consolidation, it's the gathering of the politically exposed. And in 2026, I expect this pressure on Putin's Russia to intensify further.
President Zelensky has praised a set of security commitments made by Ukraine's allies. This was at a summit in Paris. It includes a declaration of intent by France and Britain to deploy troops in Ukraine if a peace deal is reached with Russia. Many details still to be worked out, and Russia has previously rejected some of what's being proposed. Here's our Ukraine correspondent, James Waterhouse.
As their name suggests, this mostly European coalition has always said it's willing to help Ukraine after the fighting stops, but never how. In Paris, though, there was the first bit of detail. A promise from the UK and France to send troops once a ceasefire is in place. We're told thousands as part of a reassurance force across land, sea and air.
So when you hear talk of peace this week, understand what it really is. Language trying to get ahead of reality. And the reality is this: Russia is weaker than it was. Its options are fewer. Its alliances are thinner. The system holding this posture together is cracking under the pressure. Peace doesn't arrive because someone announces it. It arrives when behaviour changes. And right now, behaviour tells us this war and the global tension surrounding it is entering a more unstable phase, not a calmer one. For that reason, Putin may eventually sign a peace deal, not because he has won, but because he is failing. But ask yourself, where does he get his victory? Where does he achieve his original objectives? This has been Voices from the Front. If you want a deeper strategic picture, watch The Power Shift. It explains why this week unfolded the way it did. And as always, I'm reporting this from inside it. Stay alert, stay critical, and don't confuse words with outcomes. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for watching.